Tonight, we are not just talking about a scandal, a rumor, or a trending hashtag. We are talking about a truth that even the brightest stars tried to hide, until their hearts could no longer carry it alone. When Yulong quietly knelt in front of his wife, young Mei Mei, during her grandmother's funeral and whispered, "You are not alone," fans thought they were simply witnessing a touching moment of support. But what if that scene was only the surface? What if behind that single sentence was a story of sleepless nights, silent breakdowns, unspoken guilt, and a promise that has now changed the way they live, love, and face the public forever? Welcome to Update X24H. Tonight, Yulong and young Mei Mei finally let the world see the heartbreaking truth they tried to carry in silence. On the surface, the world saw a simple headline: an elderly grandmother passing away peacefully at 3 a.m. in a hospital bed. But for Yulong and young Mei Mei, that moment was not just the end of a life. It was the collapse of a foundation. This woman had been the steady presence behind their successes, the quiet voice who reminded them who they were before the cameras, before the fame, before the noise. For Mei Mei, she was more than a grandmother. She was the person who held her when early dreams were crushed, who stitched costumes by hand when money was tight, who watched every performance as if it were the first. For Yulong, she was the one who welcomed him into the family without hesitation, who offered guidance without judgment, who treated him not as a celebrity, but as a grandson. So when she slipped away, they did not only lose a relative, they lost a witness to their entire journey, someone who knew their truest selves. The tears at the funeral were not only for death, but for the sudden silence of a voice that had shaped their lives for years. Before the funeral, fans only saw fragments: postponed events, early departures from set, a tiredness in Mei Mei's eyes that even makeup could not fully hide. To the public, it might have looked like normal work fatigue or a busy schedule catching up with her. In reality, she was living two lives at once, and both were pulling her to the edge. By day, she had to stand under bright lights, remember lines, listen to directors, and give interviews with a practiced smile. By night, she hurried to the hospital, exchanging a script for her grandmother's frail hand, trading stage applause for the quiet ticking of machines. In those corridors, there was no stylist, no manager, no protective filter. There was just a granddaughter watching the strongest person she knew slowly fade. Yulong watched her wear herself thin. He saw the way her shoulders stiffened when her phone lit up with a hospital call. He noticed how her laughter on stage sounded slightly forced, how her eyes would drift away for a second, as if checking whether there was still time to say one more goodbye. It was in those unseen days, the canceled schedules, the whispered updates from doctors, the restless car rides between studio and hospital, that their hearts were already breaking. In an age where every private moment can be turned into public content, silence can be misunderstood. Some observers asked why the couple did not immediately share their struggle online, why there were no long posts or emotional live streams. The answer, quietly echoed through those close to them, was simple and deeply human. They wanted their grief to remain real, not performative. They understood that once their sorrow was placed in front of millions, it would inevitably be dissected, judged, replayed, and perhaps even doubted. Every tear could be frozen into a screenshot, every expression turned into a meme, every pause speculated upon. That thought was unbearable. They were not afraid to show emotion. They were afraid of seeing their most painful hours repackaged for clicks and entertainment. By choosing silence, they chose to protect the dignity of a woman who had never asked for fame. Their grandmother had lived a life far from spotlights. They felt she deserved a farewell away from them too. So they held their grief close, not because they did not trust their fans, but because this was one chapter of their lives they needed to live without an audience. Only when the first storm of pain had settled did they allow a small part of that story to reach the world. When images from the funeral finally surfaced, the world froze on a single frame. Yulong, one knee on the ground, facing his wife. In that snapshot, he was not a carefully styled actor or a distant star. He was simply a man choosing to lower himself so he could look into his wife's eyes at the same level as her grief. Around them, incense smoke drifted through the air, soft prayers murmured in the background. Mei Mei's hands trembled as she tried to follow the ceremonial steps, her mind torn between protocol and pain. Something in her posture made it clear. She was there physically, but her heart was still at the hospital bed, clinging to a hand that was no longer warm. Yulong reached out, covered her shaking fingers with his own, and spoke words so simple that they echoed around the world. You are not alone. That sentence was more than comfort. It was a promise that he would carry part of her burden, that he would not treat this loss as hers alone just because she shared blood with the departed. He was claiming the sorrow as his too. The internet saw a romantic gesture. But at its core, that kneel was a declaration. In joy or in mourning, he would not stand above her or behind her. He would be right there beside her. When the last guest left and the final flash of a camera faded, the house grew quiet. The flowers remained, the framed photographs remained, but the noise of the world retreated. It was in that hushed atmosphere, surrounded by traces of a life well lived, that the couple began to think about what should come next. Grief can easily become a closed room, a place where memories turn into chains. Both of them felt the weight of what if, and if only. But then, almost naturally, the conversation shifted. Instead of asking why their grandmother had to leave, they began asking what she would have wanted them to do with the love she had left behind. She had always encouraged them to help others when they could, to remember where they started, to use their platform for more than personal gain. Honoring that, they quietly discussed creating something living in her name. A scholarship, a small fund, a yearly project for young people who reminded them of themselves in their early days. No press conference, no dramatic announcement. Just two people at a table, turning sorrow into intention. The plan itself may evolve, change, or even remain private, but the seed is there. A desire to let one woman's life continue to touch others even after her passing. The story of their loss is not only about what happened to them. It is also a mirror held up to everyone watching. As details emerged, many fans found themselves thinking less about celebrities and more about their own families. Comments began to appear. Regrets about calls never made, visits postponed, words left unsaid because people assumed there would always be more time. The unspoken message at the heart of this story is both gentle and urgent. Do not wait. Do not wait for a hospital bed to realize how much someone means to you. Do not wait for a funeral to gather the courage to say thank you, or I love you. Go home while there is still time does not only refer to a physical place. It means returning emotionally to the people who shaped you, who stood by you before you became whoever you are today. It might be a grandparent in a small town, a parent working late, or an old friend you have slowly drifted away from. Through their example, without giving a formal speech, Yulong and Mei Mei are quietly reminding everyone. Life is fragile, love is finite in time, and presence is the greatest gift we can offer. The door to home is open now. One day it will not be. If this story touched you even just a little, please take a second to subscribe to Update X24H, so you will not miss the next chapter in the lives, struggles, and quiet victories of the people we think we already know. Thank you so much for watching, for feeling, and for staying with us until the end. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and remember, sometimes one simple message, one phone call, or one held hand can change everything. See you in the next video on Update X24H. Yellow Heart.